Have you played Pick 6 from DraftKings? What are you waiting for? You better get on it. It's Super Bowl 59, the last time to play NFL Pick 6 this season. As the official daily fantasy sports partner of the NFL, DraftKings does fantasy sports like no one else. Play for better payouts on Pick 6. It's super easy to get started. Select 2 or more players. Choose if they'll have more or less of a stat, like touchdowns, yardage, sacks, and more. Pick 6 is available in most states, including Missouri, California, Texas, Georgia, and more. And DraftKings is making it even sweeter for first-timers. New Pick 6 customers play $5 to get $59 in Pick 6 credits. Win more cash on Pick 6. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use code BALLERS. That's code BALLERS for new customers to play $5 and get $59 in Pick 6 credits only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
You want control of your financial future, and Schwab knows that. That's why when it comes to managing your wealth, we give you more choices, like full-service wealth management and advice when you need it most. You can also invest on your own and trade on Thinkorswim, our powerful award-winning trading platforms. Plus, you'll get low costs, transparent pricing, and 24/7 live help. Because at Schwab, we understand it's your financial journey, and we believe you should have choices in how you invest. Visit schwab.com to learn more.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast with your hosts, Kyle Borganoni and Matthew Betz.
Welcome in. It's February 7th here, a Super Bowl edition of the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Borganoni, and I am joined, as always, by Matthew. He's not nervous at all, Betz.
I feel great, Kyle. You know, we got a couple of days here till Sunday. I can feel myself though, like as the hours go by, I'm getting a little nervous. You know, I can see a fourth quarter scenario where it's a 1-score game. Mahomes has the ball, and you have this deep feeling in your gut of what's about to happen. But I think the Eagles match up pretty well, man. So I think it's going to be a great game. I'm super excited to play DFS, to bet a ton. We have taken so many props for this game, to sweat some props and sweat some Eagles action here. So hopefully on our next show, which, you know, it's going to be a little while, hopefully on that next show we have good news to talk about.
How do your girls feel? Like, your girls are young, right? Like 2 years old, and then you have another one even younger. Like, do they understand what's going on in Eagles country?
You know, they really don't. They do, however, often yell, "Go Saquon" at the TV, which makes me so happy. Every now and then we get a "Go Jalen," but oftentimes they'll like walk by the TV, they'll see the games are on, and then they just go pick up a toy and, you know, run away or something. So they don't really fully grasp it. I've been trying to have the talk, you know, of, hey, Dad's going to be really stressed on Sunday. Like, you know, if you need me, ask me on Saturday or Monday kind of thing. But I don't think they fully understand. But we'll have our Eagles gear on, get a nice little family pick. Should be a fun day.
It would be funny if, like, anytime any TV show's on, Sesame Street, whatever, it's just "Go Saquon." It's just like they're just conditioned. Even like when they get older, they're in middle school and stuff. Like, my dad told me that I have to say "Go Saquon" no matter what. There's parts of fandom that I still have to explain to my kids. Like, they get that the Braves are good, and the Braves have been good for a long time. But like, when the trade happened with Luka Doncic, my son was like, "This is awesome, the Lakers." I go, no, we don't like the teams just because they have big names. And he's like, "Well, why do we like the Falcons?" And I had to do some soul searching and say to myself, I don't really know why. I don't know why we like.
What? That is a great question, son. It's because we have Kyle Pitts.
He has gone from, okay, let's root for this guy, the world's against him, to get off my lawn. get out of here. I can't do this anymore. And if somebody wants to trade for him and he goes off, I don't even care anymore. I just don't even
hilarious. In the few best ball drafts I've done, which is not that many yet, I didn't take any of the elite tight ends, and it was like round 14. I was like, you know what? I've got Drake London. I've got Penix. Should I do it? And I hesitated on Kyle Pitts, and he kept falling and falling. And I was like,
you better
know
have
what?
taken him in the 14th.
At this point, I was like, I have to do this. So I've got some hard-earned dollars, Kyle, on Kyle Pitts. How could this possibly go wrong? We'll see. It's funny to see the landscape change so much, where like Don Kincaid was a 5th-round pick. Kyle Pitts was around 6 or 7 last year. Those guys are buried now. So we'll see if the pendulum swung too far. But yeah, man, it's been rough.
Betz and I are going to break down the Super Bowl lots of different ways. On this one, we will give some of the props we like. We will go head-to-head in a Battle Royale. And then at the very end, we will build a parlay together that I feel pretty good. And in the past, we've done pretty well on these. I know with parlays, they are not something we recommend. I would say the Super Bowl is one of those things you get to root for with your crew, whoever you're with, and just say, hey, I was almost this close to winning this much money. That is the line that everyone's going to use. Like, oh man, if I just would have had this. Just a reminder, everybody and their mama is going to have the same thing. I mean, your mother tried to bet the Saquon over, but she was also taking the Eagles under, and it was like, I don't know if this was the right thing to do. So we'll build the parlay for you. A couple years ago, Bengals and Rams, you and I, we were stupid. I think we had like 9 or 10 legs, and I think we were off by 1. It was like, I can't remember what it was, but we were off by just a couple.
Yeah, I forget what. I think it might have been T. Higgins, one of his either yards or catches.
Classic.
It was off. Classic T. Whenever you count on him and you need him, where you at, buddy? I think he was off by like 5 or 6 yards or something ridiculous. So it's a fun sweat. These SGPs are so incredibly negative EV. It's unbelievable how much the books hold on these. But we're letting our hair down. We don't care, Kyle. It's the Super Bowl. This is our last show of the regular, of the 2024-2025 season. So we're going to give out a parlay that we can all sweat together and hopefully make a little bit of money.
Yeah, just a little update here, a little housekeeping at the top. We go into off-season mode for the DFS and Betting podcast. And really what that is Betz and I take like a month and a half break. It's literally it. We take a short little break, and a lot of that is building out the Ultimate Draft Kit, which, if you're one of those people that you are an Ultimate Draft Kit Plus member, if you're a Ultimate tiered subscriber, if you want to buy the Dynasty Pass, the DFS, whatever iteration you want, that comes out Super Bowl Sunday. So you can have direct access if you're one of those people. UDKplus.com if you're one of those people. That's what we get to start working on more and more behind the scenes. And so we take a short little break, but then we come right back in April talking NFL draft, NFL draft props. May is all best ball and team projections. June and July is the summer of best ball, where every single week Betz and I get to talk through best ball and play with you guys. And then we come right back to August, which is wild to say right now, but we'll talk season-long stuff, betting strategy, DFS strategy, and then back to the regular season. So it's just a short break. It's not much, but what are you going to be doing over the next 2 months other than just firing away NBA DFS stuff?
Yeah, that's the main thing. That and PGA, which is very, very fun if you've never played. And speaking of golf, hopefully getting out a little bit myself here to golf. Not the best weather right now, but hopefully as it gets a little warmer, get out and play some golf, more time with the kids and, being a dad, hopefully. But yeah, man, I love this time of year. Like in season for us is kind of crazy, where it just Monday comes and you do the same thing through Sunday, and then you repeat and you do it all again the next week, and you do that 18 weeks in a row, and then you get to the playoffs and you keep doing it. You get a chance to kind of like step back and digest the season that just happened and look at the new incoming rookies and look at free agency and team building and all that sort of stuff. And I love that aspect of our job. So yeah, a ton of good work going into the Dynasty podcast and the Dynasty Pass, like you mentioned. So for work, I'm excited for those couple things. And if you would like to keep hearing Kyle and I, we do have another show. Kyle and I host the Dynasty podcast together with Mike and Jason. So we're not going away. Just on this show, it'll be a little break. But yeah, man, it's always fun to take a breath and reset a little bit this time of year.
Yeah, and our whole company gets to reset on a lot of different things we do. In a couple of weeks, Andy, Mike, and Jason are going to be at the FSGA. So you and I don't know if you knew this, we're doing the Footcast together.
Oh, baby. Watch out.
So we got some other stuff we're going to be working on. This weekend, my wife and I are going on one of our reading retreats. We do this once a year. We get a cabin, stack of books, and you're not allowed to bring, any technology. You can bring your phone, but we don't look at the phones the whole time. So I'm going to be off the grid before Super Bowl Sunday, just completely out. No one's going to be able to talk to me. I'll love it. And then, taking my family to Arizona for spring break. I don't know if I told you that, but
love it.
So, I will be helping coach a T-ball team. That's fun. My son, I'm shooting for the Rockies. I want to be the Rockies.
That'd be kind of fun. I like it.
You want to pick a team if you're a coach that's like sorry, Rockies fans, you get it. Like a lovable loser. You don't want somebody that's like your rival. Like, dear Lord, I would never pick the Phillies. No chance it'd be the Mets or the Yankees. But the Rockies, that is a safe, neutral ground to pick.
That's true.
So, anyway, we got that coming up over the next couple of months. We will still be on Discord, and you feel free to reach out to us. You can jump in with us whenever you want. Let's talk about this game, because that's why you're here.
Stack Attack.
We previewed this game last week, but let's be honest, you haven't got enough content for yourself. And so this week, we're going to focus mostly on building out game scripts for DFS. And for us, during the season, we mostly talk about this from cash perspective. We're going to mostly focus on tournament. And because we're playing Showdown, there's a little bit different strategy. So if you want some more of that, it's on our website. If you want to get some Showdown strategy, we'll give some percentages and kind of a range of outcomes of certain players of saying, hey, if you played this player at captain, here's what you need at their salary, and here's how this could work based on the rest of your build. Just remember, everybody's going to get played. So it's really hard for us to say this guy's super sneaky. Nobody's going to talk about him because there's so many different players. Sky Moore might be a really sneaky name. He's probably not going to play. And so I probably won't talk about him. But those are the kind of names that you're going to have to sift through. You can find those in our optimizer if you want. But the line right now is KC minus 1.5, over-unders at 48.5. Not much has changed. Do you expect some movement this weekend from the heavy hitters known as Borg and Betz?
I actually don't. The thing that did change from last week when we recorded was the total was at 49.5. So it opened, I think, 48, if I'm not mistaken. Bet up to 49.5, back down. Now a point to 48.5. Tells you the line is pretty efficient. That's usually my take on this stuff is like Vegas is very good at what they do and it's very efficient. But I know you had a lean to the under last week when we talked. I had a lean to the over. Obviously, I'm not the smart people putting my hard-earned thousands of dollars on this type of stuff, so I'm going to trust that maybe that's right. I will have game scripts, obviously, that the over correlates, but the under is interesting from a DFS standpoint because I think it brings into play some of these I almost called them these guys. When I mean defenses. These guys on this slate, the defenses and the kickers that I think are not fun to talk about, but I think might be heard from on this slate. So that was my first take when I saw the line movement was like, nobody's really considering that those options are potentially good plays on a slate where it's pretty tightly priced. So I'm interested to get your take on that type of stuff for Showdown. But do you have any leans on anything moving here in the lines or the total?
Yeah, I mean, when it was at 49.5, that's when I was feeling the under. And I do have some Butker takes. I'm not going to give them right now. We're going to kind of slowly work our way in. But I feel like that's mostly what people want to hear from me. I mean, they want to hear you talk and give as many unbiased thoughts about the Eagles. They want to hear me talk about kicker stuff. So I do have some of those. We'll give some of the fun props too. But I will say I was talking to a friend today playing pickleball, which I'll also be doing over the next couple months. And he was asking me, he's like, how do you feel about like hosting the show? Like, I know Betz is an Eagles guy. Do you feel like he's just going to like give homer takes? I go, I honestly think we know what he wants to happen, but I feel like he doesn't have to really battle himself too much. So I feel like your perspective is game flow. Here's what could happen if this works. Like Jalen Hurts, I think you and I are both on the same page that this is a game where he might be needed to throw a little bit more than what we're used to, right? We're used to efficiency, low volume, run it with Saquon, get some tush pushes. And I think there's going to be a little bit more volume here. And so you and I might give a game script of if Jalen Hurts goes off, and we've already given the over on his passing yardage, here's how you could build. So I would say my general thought is my lean is the under, but I'm going to be playing both game scripts. The game script that I feel most confident having leverage on the field is where the Eagles passing game is kind of the central point. You just get so much leverage here.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think when you think about this team and kind of like the general discourse around the Eagles is, and I'm not saying it's wrong, this is Saquon's team, and he's the engine of the offense, and they play great defense, and that's how they win these ball games by having Jalen Hurts, complete 12 passes a game. That's what's happened. So I can't say it's wrong. But when you look at their schedule and who they've played in their game scripts, they've been up huge in the second half, a ton this year. And of course, you're going to feed Saquon in those game scripts. They're underdogs here in this spot. Teams facing KC have logged the 9th highest pass rate over expectation. We just haven't seen it recently. And when I mean recently, like the last 2.5 months from Jalen Hurts as far as a volume passer. But it wasn't that long ago, last year, that Hurts was having massive games as a passer. And even against these Chiefs in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, over 300 yards, 8.0 YPA. So I think I'm with you in that just my general take on this game as far as DFS tail end outcomes that I think are more likely to happen than maybe the field does is these guys hitting a ceiling performance in the Eagles pass game, meaning A.J. Brown at captain, Devonta Smith at captain. I'll be way overweight Jalen Hurts, both at flex and captain relative to Mahomes. Not that those guys are, not that Mahomes is a bad play by any means, but just I think that's where my angle is on the slate, and I'm going to roll the dice and kind of hope for the best.
I've been looking a little bit deeper at the matchup of the offensive defensive line because really the best part of the Eagles, we would say, is Saquon, but really what makes Saquon even more special than he was in New York is this offensive line and the way that they set things up. Specifically, I think the biggest advantage is in these man and gap concepts. Like the left side of the line, I did this deep dive where I was like, okay, what side of the line matches up best with the way that the Chiefs roll? And the Eagles in man and gap have averaged 5.7 yards per carry. And then if you only look at when they've done it to the left side, it's 8.2 yards per carry. It's the highest success rate in the league. And it's where the Chiefs have allowed the 3rd highest run success rate. So I think I'm looking at the offensive line, and I think the easiest way to look at this is to say, okay, well, Saquon's going to have his, and so it kind of limits the upside. But if I'm Steve Spagnuolo, I think it's very easy to say the easiest thing to stop in this game would be the run. So while we look at the advantage of the Eagles' offensive line, I think the key to this game and the key to building, in my opinion, is can I get A.J. Brown in a spot where he goes off? And I think he can. You're just going to see a lot of outside stuff, a lot of outside press. So I want to build that way. I just don't know if I'm assuming because I don't want to get buried by Saquon. Like you start building a lineup and you start talking about the Eagles passing game and you go, am I going to be able to fit in Saquon? So let's just talk about Saquon first because I think he's the biggest piece of this entire game. We'll go to the Eagles side and then we will talk a ton of Chiefs. But how are you handling Saquon knowing he's going to be probably the most popular captain and the most popular flex, other than the quarterbacks?
Yeah, and think about hand building, right? There's an insane amount of action this week on DraftKings, which is great for us. If you're looking to play, they want a lot of people to come play on their site this week, and it's the big game. It's the last chance, so people are going to play. And when I think about everybody playing with hand building, smaller stakes type stuff, the lottos, it's who's the first person I'm going to click? Obviously, it's Saquon Barkley, right? And I can't say that's wrong or I argue with it, but just know, I do think he's going to be very, very, very popular. I think he's going to be the most popular captain on the slate. And I think for me, I'm gonna run 150, so I'm gonna have exposure to a ton of different things. But I think for me, I'll be a little bit underweight Saquon relative to the field. Now, does that mean I'm gonna have 5% Saquon captain? No, but am I gonna have 20 or 25% where I think he could come in small field? I think he could come in up to 30%. I'll be underweight those numbers and just say if there's a spot where I know I can for sure get leverage, that's a spot to do it. I fully acknowledge there's a chance that Saquon buries me. I'm kind of okay with that on this slate, mostly because that also means the Eagles might win. But that's my general stance is generally underweight Saquon just because it's not an apples to apples comparison. But in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, no, Miles Sanders is not Saquon Barkley. But entering that game, I know they're not exactly the same. Entering that game, the Eagles were number 1 in EPA rushing offense. They were a very good running team even a couple years ago without Saquon. They loaded the box like crazy in that game and made Jalen Hurts beat them. And I think, if that's going to be the next approach that Spags takes here, Steve Spagnuolo, their defensive coordinator, then I could see the path where this pass game gets there. So that's my stance on Saquon captain. I don't know if you differ on that, but that's my general stance right now on Saquon.
Yeah, in the large field stuff, he's going to be at least 15+%. And that gets to the point where it just depends on how you play. Like if you're playing a 150, you'd be foolish to not put him in there. But I think it would make sense knowing who you're playing against to take an underweight stance in the flex. It's just, this isn't a, if he beats me, beats me. This is, I want to not just min cash here. Like I'm looking for leverage in a tournament with 100,000 plus people. And the way that I do that is the most expensive guy everyone's just counting on, and I'm just going to have different roster constructions. That's like all the theory is. There's not really nothing that deep. I think the Eagles will have success running the ball, but I was going through scripts of how does he fail at his price point as a $12,000 flex? And it's like, if this game hits the over and he doesn't hit 15 points, okay, well, that's what you need. But in game scripts where he hits, or the game hits the under, like, what do I need from him? I need him to, if he scores once, but the Eagles have to come back and the passing attack gets there, like we're talking about, then I think Saquon's not essential. So I think the way to do it with Saquon is, if you want to get weird, if you're saying I'm not going to play with him, you're saying it's the Eagles passing game, you're stacking up with one of the wide receivers and in captain and Hurts in there, and then you're going the opposite side and playing the running game of the Chiefs side. You say Hunt gets in the end zone, maybe you get a defensive guy in there or Butker, and you say this hits the under. Like that's the game script I'm doing with Saquon. I'm not telling people that's what's going to happen, but I will have some where I don't play Saquon just because I want to be underweight the field.
Yeah, and I think that's the take home here is like he's clearly a great play. Projection's awesome. He's been awesome. The offensive line's great. But like you said, in these kind of contests where it's like I'm going for first, man. I don't want to min cash this thing. I just think that's a nice spot to get leverage. If you are going to play Saquon captain, I think the way I'm going to try to do it is just by unique combinations. And I think for a lot of people, it's like, okay, I'll play Saquon, and then I'm correlating and saying the Eagles are leading, and then I'm going to play Mahomes with at least two of his, wide receivers or tight ends. And like that gets you on a pretty chalky construction. So my general stance is like, if I'm going to play Saquon, maybe I play it with Eagles D, with Jalen Hurts. Maybe it's a 4-2 build or a 5-1, which I think is going to be ultra contrarian on this slate. Not likely to happen, but in the rare instances it does. Certainly that feeds into Saquon getting 25 carries and being the optimal captain. So you just kind of want your lineup to tell a story there, if that makes sense. So yeah, if I'm going to get Saquon captain exposure, which I will have, don't get me wrong, I do kind of want it more in those unique builds.
Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back with the Eagles.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
Shake, 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 Sinora, shake it all the time.
When you add a shake of Frank's Red Hot, you open a world of better. A world where wings bring out the flavor of game day any day, and where buffalo chicken dip takes any party up a notch. It's the perfect blend of flavor and heat. Frank's Red Hot. I put that on everything.
All right, I got to keep talking about the run game real quick. I know we're going to go to the passing game, but like the Chiefs, what they're really good at, and what Spagnuolo is really good at, is limiting big plays. The Chiefs allowed only 6 rushes all year, not including scrambles, of 20-plus yards. So that's been Saquon's calling card. They've actually, in the playoffs, their rush success rate has gone down. This is better teams that they played against. But we all know the big plays. That's what we've seen when we watch these especially the last 2 weeks against the Rams and Commanders. So the explosive plays is, I think, enticing for the field. It's just like, if I get buried by this, I'm done. But there are scenarios where Saquon touches the ball 25 times and ends up with like 80 total yards. And if he doesn't get in the end zone, then obviously that's not going to be helpful for us. So at the end of the day, I'll be underweight Saquon based on game theory. But, if 50% of the field he's going to be in the flex, it's like, how low can you go? You can't get much lower than like 35, 40%. So, play Saquon, but based on the public, I'm with you. It's probably not the best place to gain leverage. All right, let's keep talking about the Eagles' passing attack, because I think you and I are a little bit more bullish on Hurts. He had a 300-yard game last time these two teams played in the Super Bowl. his salary's not that out of control for us to go for a player that usually has ceiling outcomes. So how are you looking at this from Hurts? And then how are we going to do the wide receivers?
Yeah, I think the thing for me on Hurts is just in general, the pass volume for me, I think is going to be a little bit higher than what we've seen. And so if I think that outcome is possible, there's certainly going to be a bump in my captain Hurts teams to AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, and or Dallas Goedert. In the largest field stuff, Millie Maker, like you just need the one random guy that catches a touchdown. Jahan Dotson should make your player pool on those teams. Obviously unlikely to happen, but we only need one catch for a touchdown, and it happened in the Green Bay Packers game, so it's possible. But really, like for me, that's kind of what I'm thinking about. And then I'm thinking about how does he hit a ceiling or just beat Saquon as the guy you need at the top of the salary range? It's the tush push, right? So like in theory, Saquon can still have, like you said, 80 yards, 100 yards, but if they get tackled at the 1 or the 2 yard line a couple times in this game, it's very likely Hurts is getting at least one rushing score, maybe two. So I don't mind in my captain Hurts teams not having Saquon Barkley. I also think in teams where you have, AJ Brown or something and Hurts at flex, probably docking Saquon. Those are the ideas I'm kind of playing around with in my head. Obviously, like I talked about, there's the 5-1 outcome that not likely, but it's possible that you could play those two together. But I think for me, like when I think about how the game could go, unless the Eagles just run away with it, which I highly don't think is going to happen. I think they're going to be pushed. And I think on those situations, like you kind of want the Chiefs players you think are going to hit on the other side of that, if that makes sense, to push Hurts to throw. So whether it's via the tush push, rushing, increased efficiency against, easier fronts, like if they do really load it up against Saquon and you have 7 or 8 guys in the box, AJ Brown and Devonta Smith are two of the best receivers in the game. And like I said, Hurts is not the best passer, but he's capable and he can hit those guys. So I just think in general, for me, I'll be boosting the Eagles pass game, like I said, and definitely getting some Hurts captain exposure just because the rushing touchdown equity is so good here.
Yeah, if they have to bring an extra defender to help out in the box, it's a very good sign for the passing game because on the year, the Chiefs play too high 61% of the time. It's the second highest rate in the league. However, when they do have to move to single high, when they help out in the run, they tied for the highest fantasy points per dropback allowed in the regular season with the Rams. So it is a coverage that when they've had to do it, it hasn't gone well. And the example I use is the Bills in Week 11. The Bills kind of ran away with that game, specifically because Josh Allen and James Cook, they ran for 3 touchdowns, and you kind of had to like help out and keep things honest. So I like that, but it's also, it's a chicken or egg thing where it's at the end of the day, if they're helping out in the run, does that mean that Saquon is gashing them? And therefore, like, you get these little opportunities where, Brown has a big score, but Saquon's effective. And at the end of the day, it's like, I'm paying up for Hurts when he just throws for 1 touchdown or something like that. Like, we expect a tush push, but if Saquon is effective, then it doesn't really make sense. Like from a median outcome, Saquon and Hurts in the same lineup is great if I'm building a cash lineup. You're just hoping you get all the touchdowns there. But from a ceiling outcome, like it's going to happen because a wide receiver hits the 100-yard bonus. And that's where I'm going here. So my question is, what are you doing about Saquon and Hurts in the same lineup?
I'll have a little bit of that together, especially like you can't predict this stuff, but there's outcomes that exist where like Captain Saquon, 100 yards on the ground, 2 rushing scores. The Eagles only score 1 more touchdown, and it happens to be a tush push. Like, there's weird... These slates with Eagles teams are so hard because they both project so well, but there are outcomes where that happens, and then, like, none of the pass catchers really even, like, matter for the Eagles, which is such a weird thing to kind of wrap your head around as far as how you're building. So I'll have a little bit of that combo, but like I said, I think the most likely situation is, like, when Hurts is the captain, the rate at which Saquon is in the flex is probably less than the field assumes, and vice versa. When Saquon is the captain, you envision 100 yards and 2 scores, and maybe Hurts doesn't have the game he needs, or he just isn't needed to throw. We've seen that a ton this year. So I'm correlating those two most likely to be negatively docked, if that makes sense. But, in like a 150 set or something, or a 20 max, certainly having a little bit of those two together, I think is fine.
I'm also interested to see how Hurts handles the blitz. I feel like his downfall, if I were to give like what bugs me the most is inviting pressure that the offensive line did not give him.
Yep.
And part of that is blitzes where somebody's just not manned up in the right way, and therefore he's just kind of inviting pressure. So on man blitzes this year, it was tough. And so I just wonder, like last time in the Super Bowl, he did really well against it. And yet I feel like he's kind of regressed recently. Like there's moments, last year you saw it at the end of the year, where it was like, oh no, this team is unraveling. And that's like his demise. So I just worry if they're able to sit back in their, dime coverage, and then they're able to send these blitzes, like that's the kind of stuff that bothers me the most about Jalen Hurts. But I think I'm going to be overweight AJ Brown and Devonta Smith. Like I feel like Devonta Smith, there's going to be a gap between those two. And Devonta Smith, who I'm a sucker for, you obviously love, like he's a player that I probably will have more of because of the way that the Chiefs play defense. So that's just me.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I'm gonna be overweight both guys at captain, and not make a this or that decision on these two. I think they're both great leverage spots. I'm seeing around the industry somewhere from like 7 to 9% captain on AJ Brown, 2 to 5 for Devonta Smith. It's very hard to find guys that could give you a ceiling at that roster percentage, especially at this price tag. So I think like in a 150 set, if you run, I don't know, 12, 13% captain AJ Brown and like 8 to 10% Devonta Smith, you don't even have to get that much to get over the field on these two at captain. So that's like one of my kind of stars on this slate, is just like, that's what I'm going to do. And like I said, hope for the best. But yeah, I'm with you. I think Devonta Smith's super interesting. There aren't going to be a lot of outcomes that exist where he needs a lot of volume and gets a lot of volume to get there. But when you're playing these large field showdown contests, like you're playing for the 90th percentile outcome to happen anyway. And we know that Devonta Smith's just a talented dude. Give him enough looks, good things usually will happen. The other thing that I like about Smith is that not as much recently, but on the course of the season, the Chiefs were pretty vulnerable against slot wide receivers. Devonta Smith, out of these two, between AJ Brown and Smith, will move into the slot more often. So I think just another little bonus there for Smith. But yeah, I'm with you. I think just get a little bit over the field on these two, and kind of hope the Eagles can have some efficiency here passing the ball.
Nice little boost for him, I like that. 56% of his routes in the slot. And then it's weird because we look at these two and we would obviously say AJ Brown is the alpha and he's priced that way. But in terms of first read target share, Devonta Smith had 32% of the team's first reads, which was the same as DJ Moore. It's the 9th highest in the NFL. Like that is a wide receiver one level of first read target shares. Now, obviously AJ Brown's in like the 40%, and against man coverage, he's the best in the league in yards per route run. I don't know how much you're going to see that. So it's like one of those stats that I start to dig deeper. I go, oh man, this matchup's great. I don't know if Steve Spagnuolo is just going to be like, oh yeah, I'll just stick them in one-on-one coverage against this, dude who's so physical. So I do think Devonta Smith is in a good place. I think I'm with you. I'm going to be overweight both of them in the flex. I'll have a bunch of captain and be ahead of whatever it is. If Devonta Smith comes in at 5%, put me at, if I'm only playing a 20 max, or if you're playing a 150, like get up to 10%, 8 to 10%, and you're going to be super happy. So any other thoughts about the Jahan Dotsons, Aeneas Smith, Johnny Wilson, the boys?
No, not really. Just mentioned Dotson. If you're playing 150, should make your player pool. Just know the most likely outcome is an icicle at the end of the night with a 0.
That is the best compliment you can give. Do not X him out of your player pool.
I mean, he caught a touchdown in the first playoff game. That's literally all you need at this price. One catch for a touchdown. It's tough, man. It's tough. It's so funny because like normally,
is he cheap enough?
See, 1,600. Yeah, I mean, just thinking about like who's priced down there. Juju is 2,000. He's definitely a better play, just medium projection. Noah Gray's down there, but like, I mean, Samaje Perine down there. Like all those guys are candidates to disappoint. So I think just from a leverage standpoint, if you just get a little bit of Jahan Dotson in your exposure, especially on Hurts teams, that makes sense to me. But really only in the large field stuff. Like if you're playing small field, I just don't think you have to go there.
When these two teams played last time, all right, it was a 4-2 build that won. And I don't know if you remember, Jody Fortson won somebody a milli. Do you know how many points he scored?
0.
Yep, as many as your grandmother.
Yep.
It's one of those things where I can't tell somebody don't play these certain players, and somebody's gonna be like, oh, this cheap guy's the dude. It's like there might be 5 cheap guys that all are the same price, that all goose, and it's really about the other players. But in general, you and I will play a lot more 4-2s. We won't play a ton of 3-3 builds. If you want to get weird with the 5-1, you're going to get so much leverage on the field. Like an incredible amount. So I think you and I, the way that we play is that like I might be wrong, but I just know I'm going to pass so much of the field that it just plays this where they're going to have 3 guys from the Eagles, 3 guys from the Chiefs and get out of there. So yeah, I'm probably exclusively going to have 4-2 builds.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think one way to think about leverage on these showdown slates is not just who are the plays and how often are they played and how can I be different there. Like you talked about, just the construction of your roster getting different. And we know the field loves the 3-3 build. And like I said, like in 150 set, I'm going to have plenty of those lineups, but I agree with you. Getting a little bit more of these unbalanced builds is a great way to do it. I think the game stays close, 1.5 point spread. Most likely that happens, but in the rare instance where one team wins by 2 touchdowns or, gets out to a huge lead, we're playing for those random weird things to happen anyway on Showdown. It's just a different game. So you want to embrace that variance for sure. So I'm with you.
All right, let's finish out talking Dallas Goedert, and then we can move to the other side and we'll talk like kickers and defense after that. So Goddard's 5,800 on DK. I'm seeing that he's going to be more popular than Devonta Smith. That hurts my heart. It's a pricing thing. He's a comfy click. I don't know if you saw on the segment on Thursday's show, but the guys built their lineup. Mike built a lineup with Dallas Goedert as captain. And, I could see it. I just think that he's going to be more popular than he should be. And I don't like that. I don't like that from a game theory standpoint.
Yeah, these guys we can talk about them together if you want, just in this range of like Hollywood Brown and Dallas Goedert. They're very easy to click because they project pretty well, medium projection. They're not expensive. And if you're willing to play them both together with like a kicker or something, you can just avoid this range of Dotson and Juju and, Justin Watson and Noah Gray and all those guys that truthfully might catch one ball or none. And so I think they're going to be very popular. Now, Goddard's been great. Like, I can't really argue with it. He's had more targets as far as our target share than Devonta Smith in the 5 games that these 3 have played together with A.J. Brown, all in the field. But if you zoom out over the last, 2-3 seasons, he's clearly been the third option. So this, to me, is what do you believe is more real? The most recent performance in the Super Bowl and playoff kind of run here, or the bigger sample size? And I feel like when roster percentage is going to just gravitate towards what we just saw, I will probably just be on the other side of it and kind of hope for the best. Saying all of that, no defense has allowed more yards to tight ends this year. So than the Chiefs. So part of me is I'm really worried about, coming in underweight here. But tight ends is so highly variant. Like even Travis Kelce last week had a terrible game, or 2 weeks ago had a terrible game, right? So, and Dallas Goedert isn't even in the same tier as the elite tight ends in fantasy. So yeah, this is a spot where I think it's a pretty somewhat easy underweight position for me, and just hope for the best.
In game scripts where they're coming back and he PPRs his way, it makes sense. But I think Dallas Goedert is better for the Eagles than his ceiling outcome for DFS. I was going through and seeing how valuable he's been on third down. He's added the most win probability of any player in the league when it comes to third down. And then the Eagles are averaging 2 more yards per carry when he's on the field this year, when he's not. So I think he's super important, and he's going to be really important in terms of picking up blitzes like I talked about earlier. I just think I'm going to be underweight if the game hits the under. If this game goes under 48.5, I think Dallas Goedert is fine at 5,800. But if the field thinks he's a really good play, then I will be the same as you. I'll be underweight. And I'm not going to say if he beats me, he beats me. But I just think that knowing that 5,800 is so comfy, I'll probably go elsewhere. It hurts my heart to see that he's getting a higher captain percentage than Devonta Smith.
I know, man. Isn't that crazy? And in the props market and stuff, his 4.5 catches is heavily juiced to the over. It's
I know.
Man, this guy's usually at 3.5 sometimes, in the line. So yeah, I truthfully, I get why he's been great, but like I said, just from a game theory standpoint, I think it makes sense to come in under.
All right, let's go to the Chiefs side, and then we'll talk defense and kickers, because those are the fun ones, and I do think there's some good angles there. Mahomes is $10K. We talked last week. This is the cheapest that we've ever had from Patrick Mahomes.
But liquor, our prices have never been lower.
I had to hit it. He's going to be, I mean, as a flex, like, it's really hard getting away from him. It's really hard. I was building out some game scripts, and I was like, how do I just not play this player, knowing how ineffective the run game has been and how good the Eagles are, that, like, if they're going to win this game, this dude's going to win MVP. So at $10K, any initial thoughts on Mahomes?
I think he's too cheap. Most quarterbacks, like if you've played Showdown all year, I mean, there's slates where, like, I don't know, Matthew Stafford or somebody like that is like 9,500, 9,600. Like, it's too cheap for Mahomes for just the pass volume. Like, I think there's a chance that we could see some efficiency come down here for the Chiefs pass game just because the Eagles defense has been great this year. But man, like, they're top 10 in pass rate over expectation. They're top 10 in neutral pass rate. Their rushing attack has been so inefficient with Pacheco and Hunt. Those guys combined are averaging 3.6 yards per carry since Pacheco returned to the lineup. They are 28th in rushing success rate in that sample. So if I'm Andy Reid and I have a choice to put the ball in Pat Mahomes', arm 40 times in this game, or give it to Hunt and Pacheco and let them, kind of plod along for 3 yards of carry, I'm giving the ball to Mahomes and kind of letting him go. So whether it's as an increase in his rushing volume, which we've seen in his playoff career, or just pass volume, even if it's not efficient, I find it really tough to see scenarios where Mahomes isn't very, very much in close consideration to be optimal at flex. For me personally, I don't have a ton of interest at captain, but I think at flex, he's a very, very good play.
Looking at how the Eagles have defended, they've been really good against the short stuff. So I feel like this team is built and set up, and then also having an all-pro linebacker in Zach Bond. Like, I think they're set up really well to be able to defend Mahomes. Now, it is frustrating when you're watching the games and you go, wait a second, this ball's not going to go further than 10 yards down the field. Why is everyone so far back? And Vic Fangio, as great as a defensive coordinator he is, I'm just going to say he has moments where I think he's gets too cute, or thinks he's too smart and goes into man-to-man. Or it's like, dude, you have a really good defensive line. Take advantage of that. Push everything short. Get these behind the line of scrimmage stuff, which they've been really good this year at defending that too. I just think that they're set up really well. And you and I were talking before. We're like, man, I feel like the game script, I really like the passing game of the Eagles. I think this is a good matchup. And then all of a sudden I was like, dang it, we're thinking the same thing. What could possibly go wrong? This is how we are so screwed. So Mahomes, the fact that you're getting so many passes within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, it sets up well for Xavier Worthy at 8K. It sets up well for him to run, but I also think the Eagles can actually defend this. So I don't know. I think he's essential play. I'm not going to be underweight at all Mahomes. I'm just going to play him the way the field's playing him. And I don't know, I'm building some lineups where he's captain and he's everything. And I'm 4-2 Chiefs, and I'm spreading it out with the Chiefs players. I'm getting a couple cheap dudes. Hopefully they get the touchdown, Juju, whoever, and trying to get the key pieces from the Eagles side. So I with Mahomes, I'm just going to play him the way the field's doing it.
Yeah, I think I'm with you in flex. I will come in underweight captain. 15 to 18% is what I'm seeing. There's just so many other guys that I think have a chance to put up, 20 to 22 DK points or more. Obviously, Saquon can do it. We know the Eagles wide receivers could do it. Travis Kelce can do it. Xavier Worthy can do it. There's just so many routes where those guys are capable of beating Mahomes at captain that's a spot I'll come in underweight. But like I said, at flex at 10K, usually the quality of quarterback we're getting there is usually not anywhere close to Mahomes. So I just think it's pretty good chalk. So I'm with you on the flex component for Mahomes.
Which wide receivers do you feel like you like the most? Worthy, I know I have a little personal stuff with Worthy, but it's the field has gained this confidence over the last 2 months of who he is, where he's running his routes. He's basically been splitting them half wide, half slot, which is great. He's been targeted on 28% of his routes since week 15. That's the highest on the team. And at 8K, he's going to get clicked a lot more than, say, Brown or Devonta Smith. So I think Worthy is one of those players that it's really hard to just take a stance and say like, oh, he's not good. I'm not going to have him in my lineups because Mahomes is going to be rostered so much. I think he's the easiest click of the dudes. So do you have a certain stance on him?
I honestly wish I had like a really strong take. I don't, because the price tag is good. The usage has been good. We talked about that last week, where the frustrating thing with Chiefs slates historically was like they're playing, 7 wide receivers and 3 tight ends, and you never know who's going to get the ball. In recent weeks, they're kind of doing what they did with Rashee Rice down the stretch last year, where Worthy is emerging as the rookie. He's leading the team in snaps, in targets, in routes run. I think he's a pretty good play. Now, the tricky thing is, how are you handling Kelce, to me, is the question, because these guys are priced pretty close together. It's really hard to fit Mahomes, Hurts, both of these guys, meaning Worthy and Kelce, and then also someone like Saquon. So you kind of have to make your choices here. So my thing I'll be trying to figure out over the next couple of days is how much Kelce I want to play versus Worthy, because I think those two together, certainly you could do it. Don't get me wrong. It's just that it's tough to do it together, and I think it's kind of a decision point on the slate.
All right, let me ask you a question. How long have you been doing this podcast with me?
Is this our 5th season?
5th or 6th?
4th?
Somewhere around there.
I don't know. Years, Kyle.
How many years have I probably made a wrong call about Travis Kelce?
Oh, every single time.
Okay. So just take that into account here. That I feel like I'm always on the wrong side of this player.
Yes.
In the Super Bowl, what if I told you in the Super Bowl that he's averaged 20.2 DK points?
I would say sign me up.
I just don't think we're getting the same Kelce from 3 or 4 years ago. I also think that Zach Bond is a different linebacker. Like, Kelce shredded linebacker coverage for years. It's just so you couldn't put anybody on him. I think that this is actually a spot where the Eagles can defend him, and they've allowed the 3rd lowest catch rate, fewest yards per target among any linebacking core, and Zach Bond's been the best in the entire league at that. So I do think they have the players to be able to do it. I think at $9K, as a flex, I'll probably be underweight. I'll definitely have some captain lineups, but I think for a flex option, I'll probably be a little underweight.
I think that's a good way to put it. Because when I think about Kelce's big games, it's not just 5 or 6 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown. When he has his games, it's 10 for 90 and 2 and those kind of outcomes. And so therefore, I think maybe my approach with Kelce would be recommending getting a little overweight captain exposure in your portfolio lineups, but underweight flex, and just saying, I'm only playing Kelce for his big games and for those, tail end outcomes that I think are still possible, especially where the touchdown equity is so good. Even if Kelce isn't incredible in the PPR department, if Mahomes only throws 2 touchdowns and they both go to Kelce, then certainly he could be the guy you need at captain. So I like that take. I'm definitely with you in that I would become an underweight on flex, but overweight captain to get those tail outcomes.
Yeah, he's not going to be, captain's going to be Mahomes, it's going to be Saquon, it's going to be Hurts, and probably Worthy ahead of him. So normally we would say that Kelce was going to be 1, 2, or 3. And so I think there's a little bit of leverage that you can't have there that you didn't have in the years past. I also think that the roster construction, because they're cheaper, you're playing Kelce with Mahomes, you're stacking those two together, and based on the salary, you can put in a Saquon on the other side and get different at the other spots. And I think your lineup's still fine because his captain roster percentage is going to be so much lower. So that's where I'm at with Kelce. Like I said, don't take any of my advice. I have no idea, 0 clue what I'm doing. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll be right back. We have talked through one game, and yet we still haven't even got to the Kansas City wide receivers or running backs. Let's go first the wide receivers, then we'll come back to Hunt, Pacheco, and then get to some of our other good stuff like props. How are you handling Hollywood Brown, DeAndre Hopkins at 4,400, which is very expensive, Juju at 2K, who's running ahead of him, and then my boy Justin Watson, who I've always had a soft spot for?
Justin Watson has run 7 total routes in the playoffs.
That's all you need, man. Have they ever lost?
He's 600. Okay, so we only need 1 catch here. And like last year, even 0 might be enough for him if the other guys at the top are just what you need. So I will have exposure to all of these guys. I will say, I think it's probably a max 1 situation of that trio of Hopkins, Juju, and Justin Watson, just because the running backs are going to get a couple targets. Worthy is going to dominate targets with Brown and with Kelsey. So I'd just be very, very surprised if 2 or 3 of those guys are in there. So for me, that's my angle. I will say Hopkins, he's way overpriced for how he's been recently. But because of that, nobody's going to play him. So even if you get, you don't even captain exposure, just at flex, like 10%, 11%, 12%, something like that on Hopkins, you'll be way over the field. And truthfully, it's like, man, I just hope he catches 2 for 25 and one of them's a touchdown. And then you get leverage on Juju. That's probably how I'm going to play it and hope for the best. But yeah, this trio should definitely be in your player pool. Like I said, I'll probably be a max 1 personally on that group of 3 at the bottom for KC.
Would you add in Noah Gray to that group, 2,800?
Yes.
Okay, because I feel like there are scenarios where you're looking at Mahomes and you're like, oh, well, if I can just get a couple of cheap guys, and they're the guys that get the touchdown, because we saw Sky Moore do that a couple years ago. Kadarius Toney, it's like, oh, I'll get 2 touchdowns there, and I'm avoiding Kelsey, I'm avoiding Worthy. I just feel like at the end of the day, like, let's say Juju is 1 for 6 and a touchdown. You're like, cool, I got a touchdown, and yet everybody's going to have him. Like, a Juju at 2K is going to be popular, relatively speaking, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's not going to get crazy, but I think he'll push at least 20%.
The ghost of Juju. Who knew that we would be talking about him on this day as
So
popular? He was the cool kid in elementary school, gets to middle school, guy fades, comes back. In high school, he's got a couple of things going for him.
It's so wild. Like, think about his career arc. He was like considered one of the best receivers in the league. Then he's basically almost out of the league, goes to New England, farts around, come back to, just come back. Just win a Super Bowl with us. It's fine. What a life.
I think my coolest was 4th grade. Have we ever talked about that?
I could see you being a cool 4th grader.
Yeah, it was definitely peak Kyle.
All downhill from there.
Have you hit your peak?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, you don't have to get...
Probably high school.
Oh, wow. You
peaked
were
in high school.
Pretty cool guy, huh?
I mean, not saying, Kyle, just saying. Yeah, it's been all downhill from there.
Running backs. Hunt has been the dude. Pacheco is somebody that you and I in the props are kind of fading. Any other stances here that you want to take with these dudes? Because Hunt is priced appropriately. 6,400 is not like I'll just throw him in there as a committee back. It's like, that's a good price. He's getting the workload, and you know what he can do inside the red zone. So 6,400 there. I think he's going to be 30 to 35%. Pacheco at 5,200 is expensive for the workload that he's been getting. And he's kind of a fun leverage piece. So anything you're doing there, and throw in some Aja Piran too.
Yeah, Piran, I mean, I'll have like a very, very small amount just in Mahomes teams where it's like they're playing from behind and they need a lot of, obvious pass down situations. He'll play 2-minute drill, stuff like that. So he should make your player pool, but not a ton. For me on these two with Hunt and Pacheco, Pacheco is a guy that had been the workhorse, but if you just follow the recent trends, like it's clearly Kareem Hunt's backfield. I think they prefer Hunt in short yardage. They prefer Hunt at the goal line. So I will have Hunt. I might just X out Pacheco, if I'm being honest with you. His snap counts have gone down every single week since he returned. His share of the running back touches have gone down every week since he returned. He's also been wildly inefficient. So even if you say like, this becomes more of an even split and they both get 10 carries, the efficiency's just been so terrible for Pacheco that I don't know that I'm going to go there. Not that Hunt has been very efficient either, but the fact that he's getting goal line touches makes it a little bit more likely that he lands in the optimal. So Hunt could have a game, right, where he's like, 12 for like 40 on the ground, but falls in the end zone twice. And that probably is enough at that salary to get there. So yeah, Hunt, I'm okay with kind of right around the field. For me, I'll be underweight, or I might even X out Pacheco. I'm not sure yet.
Hunt has been forcing more missed tackles in the playoffs. He's been actually getting a couple of explosive runs, which Kansas City's dead last in the NFL in explosive runs. But I've been kind of coming around, and maybe I'll talk this out later with you. Explosive runs are cool, but like, is 10 yards an explosive run? Like,
I think by most stat definitions it is.
I know. I'm trying to talk it out philosophically. Like, it's more of a chunk gain to me than like a huge explosive run.
Right. Like what Saquon does.
Yes, that's an explosive run. And so I'm trying to figure out, like, how often does this team hit 10 yards is great. But, like, when you look at the Chiefs, the frustrating thing is, like, they always get the yards what they need, especially on third down. And I think they trust Hunt there more than Pacheco. Like, that's where I've kind of, like, landed the plane. I probably won't have much Peter on. I think a lot of people are chasing one catch that he had in the AFC title game. So I'll probably be underweight there and underweight Pacheco, and then just meet the field at Hunt.
Makes sense.
All right. Any takes on kickers and defense? Because I have started warming up to the fact that Harrison Butker at 5K, if it's the under, okay, I think he's a good play. Like, not like great, elite, you have to lock him in your lineup. Lock in the kicker. I think he's a very, very good play. And let me throw this out there to you, okay? If he hits over 2 field goals, I think he's a good play. If he hits 3 field goals, I think he becomes an elite play. And in 8 games versus Vic Fangio, this is what Andy Reid's done. The Chiefs' offense has scored 15 touchdowns, and they've settled for 23 field goals. In 7 of 8 of those games, they've had 2 field goals, and 6 of those 8, they've had 3. So it has leaned towards red zone being an area for them that's not great. And Warren Sharp pointed this out, that this is the lowest red zone TD rate of the Andy Reid era. It's just 54%. So if they have some issues in the red zone, and I would say the Eagles have the guys to stop them, especially up front, then I think Butker gets a little bit of a boost for me in terms of flex. I think he's going to get played a ton, 20, 25%, but I don't mind going to 30% in under.
Yeah, I think both kickers are actually really good plays on this slate, because when I look at kickers, it's like, the question I ask oftentimes if I'm going to play them is, who are they priced around, and like, who do they have to beat, basically? And when you're looking at this, kind of in that price range, it's Dallas Goedert for the most part, Isaiah Pacheco, who we already talked about our concerns there, and then Marquise Brown, and below them, DeAndre Hopkins. And so it's like, Hopkins literally has run like 30% of the routes the last couple of weeks. Like, he might catch 1 pass. Butker or Elliott could kick 2 field goals and easy beat Hopkins, easy beat Pacheco, and maybe beat one of Goedert or Brown. So I actually really like both kickers just from a leverage standpoint on the guys they're priced around. Also, this game's being played in a dome right down in New Orleans, so you get that as far as kicking conditions. I like both kickers, so I'm with you on that, actually, that getting overweight these guys makes a lot of sense. I don't think I'd play them both together.
Yeah.
It's probably one or the other, but I definitely want to be overweight.
All right, in terms of the defense, how are you approaching them? Is it going to be, this game hits the under, and there's a defensive score would be great, but we're not banking on that. We're just saying that one of these sides creates turnovers. And if I had to pick which one is going to create more turnovers, I pick Kansas City just because I think Hurts is a little bit more, he just scares me sometimes in the pocket. Mahomes is one of those players that, like, you're going to figure it out. Hurts is, oh God, do not self-destruct. Do you feel that way?
I mean, he did it in the Super Bowl last time, right? Drop back 10 yards past the line of scrimmage, drifts back, holds the ball too long. Someone gets to him, he fumbles it, they pick it up, they score, and the Eagles lose the Super Bowl. I'm not mad about it, okay? I'm not mad, Kyle. It's fine. I've moved on. But yeah, he does that. He has one of the highest time to throws in the NFL. He just drifts back and holds the ball too long, and oftentimes he gets out of it, but there's one play usually every game where you're like, dude, what are you doing? And so you just hope it's not the fumble or an interception. But yeah, I'm with you that the defenses, they're tough to project because it's so hard to predict when these random outcomes will happen. But again, when you think about who's playing in these contests, a lot of people that want to see a ton of points, they want to see the over, and they want to see touchdowns. What if it doesn't happen, right? One of these defenses could certainly be in there. So yes, I will be overweight both kickers and both defenses. For me, as far as like optimizer rules, I think it'll be max 1 of Philly and Chiefs defense, max 1 of Elliott and Butker, and then like max 2 of this group of 4 together, if that makes sense.
Hurts was 36th out of 47 quarterbacks in pressure to sack ratio. That's not great. And then this stat from Next Gen, hopefully you feel okay afterwards, but across 3 career matchups against the Chiefs, Jalen Hurts has faced an unblocked pressure on 17% of his dropbacks. That's more than double his rate against all other opponents in his career. Spags is in his bags, bro.
I need to go bet Mahomes MVP right now.
MVP. Yeah.
It's over.
It is funny how I read stats like that and I go, oh man. But I mean, obviously it's a collective approach of everything, but those are the ones that are like, oh, that's not good. I did get this question before, but who is Betz's if he beats me play of the week?
I think it's Pacheco. Just too expensive for how inefficient he's been, and he's not really getting the ball a ton. I think it's Pacheco, and I'll hope for the best.
I think mine is just out of pure spite. I'm not saying this is good DFS, but I have faded Hollywood Brown, and I've gotten this far.
You might as well, right? I mean, what's one more slate?
It's worked out pretty well for myself. All right, moving on.
DFS Battle Royale.
All right, so Betz and I both built a lineup. You can use them if you want. I don't know if you know, but the winner of this gets a gift card to Chili's.
That is everything.
And you and I have not mentioned Chili's very much over the last couple months. We're letting things breathe. We get tagged in a bunch of stuff. But I just want to say, I am so proud to be a Chili's stan. I'm just so thankful that through the hard times and now through the good times, because man, things are soaring for Chili's.
We are back, baby. Not that we ever left, but they couldn't be more back.
Yeah. So winner gets the Chili's gift card. Treat your family. Treat yourself. Okay. We have no idea how we built. I obviously am not going to build something that's too wild. But at captain, I have Patrick Mahomes.
Oh, okay. I do not have Pat Mahomes. I actually have Jalen Hurts at captain.
Okay. I have Hurts in the flex.
Hurts in the flex?
Yeah. Do you have Mahomes in the flex?
I have Mahomes in the flex.
Okay. We're definitely building, I was a little scared building. I was like, okay, here's the real key point. Do you have Saquon in your lineup?
I do not.
I do. I hope you feel scared.
Oh no, I'm terrified. All right, so you have Captain Mahomes with Hurts and Saquon.
Yes, and so I did a 4-2 build with Chiefs, and so my other Chiefs are Hollywood Brown. Okay, this is my little emotional hedge right here. Harrison Butker and Juju Smith-Schuster.
I like that lineup. I'm worried. So I have Hurts with Mahomes at flex. I have paired with Hurts, Devonta Smith, and Dallas Goedert. And I've got a Mahomes double with Xavier Worthy and Juju Smith-Schuster.
So the game script, I want to hear the game script you went for. This is the one that I went through. I think I'm going to soak up all of the Eagles' touchdowns, Saquon and Hurts. I think Mahomes has a Mahomes game. I think it's possible that it hits the under, and therefore I want Butker in there as well. So that was the way that I approached mine, and this is more from a median outcome, a cash standpoint.
Yeah, in hindsight, talking through the Butker thing with you, I wish I would have had him in there, but we built this before we recorded. I just went with the pass games here. We talked about being higher on Hurts than the market, and it wasn't that I didn't want Saquon, obviously, but just pricing, it's tough to fit these guys. And I went with just the usage from the Chiefs. Worthy's been the dude recently. I'm going to follow that. And Juju, just cheap, easy to fit, and makes everything work. So ready to get buried by Butker and Saquon Barkley. What can go wrong?
Yep. I'm already ordering my chips and salsa right now.
Get a marg with it.
Prop it like it's hot.
The best part is, I don't even have to order the marg anymore.
They just know. They see you walk through the door and they say, "Sir, would you like the usual?" Yes,
the Don Julio? You know it. All right, so Betz and I are going to give a couple of different props. I did want to at least have a discussion real quick about Gatorade because it gets a lot of love. And over the last 5 years, working back, so Chiefs were purple. The year before, Chiefs were purple. Rams were blue. Buccaneers blue. Chiefs were orange. Patriots were blue. Eagles, the Nick Foles Eagles, were yellow-green. And just to give you some other stuff, red has really good odds considering it's never been used before. That's kind of an interesting little thing to throw in there. And there's also been no Gatorade shower, which you can bet for plus 1,500 4 times. But 3 of those 4 were Bill Belichick, who's just a curmudgeon and said, if you do this, you're off the team.
Oh, 100%.
So, any fun leans for the Gatorade?
I mean, if you think the Chiefs win, purple seems like a pretty solid play
little
here.
Three-peat?
Why not, right? But Eagles matching the yellow-green to, Eagles being green, them being green. I could see it. I mean, If you think the Eagles win, bet yellow. If you think the Chiefs win, bet purple.
Man, look at the value on clear, though, at plus 850.
Gross. No one would do that.
They've done it before.
I know.
There's great value here. I don't know. Yeah, yellow-green would probably be the one, but I won't be betting that one. It's just a fun one to look at. Let's give a couple of props. We gave some out last week. We gave Jalen Hurts' over. We talked about if you want Hurts MVP bets, probably bet Mahomes MVP just because, well, if you think they win. We talked about Mahomes' rush attempts. We talked about the number of Chiefs that have a catch as under 8.5, and that's now at minus 165.
That's what we took it. I've seen it's down to 7.5 in some books, and then as well on other books that still have 8.5, it's up at minus 175 or minus 180.
Moving the lines.
I know. And then Goedert, we took his over, and that's been moving in the same direction as well. So let's go back and forth. A couple of props that we want to give. All of these, you can find them in DFS Pass in our Discord channel, but it's the time just to throw it out there and just go for it.
Let it rip. Okay, so this is a fun one. Do not put a lot on this. But like we've talked about the entire show, I think the market is undervaluing how often Hurts and the Eagles pass game can have success. So one prop I found on FanDuel that's a very fun long shot. The first quarterback to reach 300 plus passing yards in the game, I took Jalen Hurts at plus 1,040 odds on FanDuel. Now there is a situation in this where neither guy gets there, and that also is a bettable play. But just like I said, I think the most likely outcome obviously is Mahomes is the guy that throws for a bunch of yards, but I think a Hurts ceiling game is possible if they're pushed here, which I think they will be pushed. So plus 1,040 odds, worth a little sprinkle.
Yeah. Once again, this is a value play. That's all that matters. You stack up at least 10 value plays here, you might hit on one of them.
That's all we need.
Yep. So I have Kareem Hunt and Saquon. You can get a market on DK where you can combine the receiving yards to hit over 19.5. It's at minus 115. I think that one of the areas where you can attack these teams is in the short area. And I think when you look at them combined, I like the over. 20 yards feels like not enough, especially if Saquon, like if the way that Steve Spagnuolo generally plays, which is dime, I think that Saquon can get a couple of dump offs here. So I don't know what his receptions line at right now. That'd be
I can look it up. I'm not sure either, but I also think too, like there's a chance Gainwell plays like 5 snaps. Like it's the last game of the year. If Saquon is healthy enough to play all these snaps, like just load him up and hope for the best. So yeah, I think that makes sense.
I like Gainwell. He's gonna be a free agent.
Yeah, I know, but we'll see.
I like Will Shipley too. All right, give me another one.
Yeah, this seems like a way too obvious bet, but Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown is only minus 110 on DraftKings. It's also minus 115 on like BetMGM, Caesars, a bunch of other books. Just going back historically in these Eagles games, Hurts is scoring touchdowns obviously at an insanely high rate because of his legs and because of the tush push. He scored in 12 of 17 games this year, 11 of 17 last year, giving him a hit rate of over 67%. These odds imply 52% implied probability. I'm going to just play what's happened the last couple of seasons versus these odds and kind of hope we get a tush push here. So Jalen Hurts, anytime touchdown, minus 110.
All right, we gave this one out as an official. Devonta Smith, under 8.5 yards on his first reception. So there's a first reception market if you find it on DraftKings. Went through, looked at all of them. It's a 62% hit rate on the under, and it's at plus 105. So in other words, I think the market's a little inefficient here. Went through all of them as first catch. All of them are short area targets. And part of that is just like get Jalen Hurts in rhythm and just get him easy completions. Devonta Smith in the slot, it's usually a lower ADOT throw anyway. So under 8.5 yards on the first reception.
Yeah, just to add on to that, Chiefs number 1 in PFF's tackling grade. They're 5th in coverage grade, and they've allowed the 5th fewest yards after contact per catch. So in other words, like if he gets like a little screen, there's a good chance he's getting taken down pretty quickly by this Chiefs defense. So I like that. I love that you went back and charted every single first target from Devonta Smith. Such a sicko. I'm going to take the total sacks in the game combined between the two teams under 5.5. So 5 or fewer total sacks, we win this. Minus 140 on Fanatics, minus 142 on FanDuel, minus 145 on Caesars. To me, this is more of a how many sacks do you think the Chiefs get in this game, because they will bring pressure, they will blitz. As far as the Eagles, they don't really blitz. They only send 4, but Mahomes has one of the lowest time to throws in the league. He's also scrambling more in the playoffs, which then would lead to less chances for sacks here. So I think whether it's, Mahomes is just good at getting the ball out, takes off and runs more, whatever the case may be, or the Eagles have success running the ball. They don't have to drop back Hurts 35 times. They can only drop him back 25. Like that also is possible for us to get home here. So total sacks in the game, under 5.5.
There's a couple of different markets that I'm taking under on Travis Kelce. And I'm looking right now on Underdog, where another one that I'm really intrigued by is his first half receiving yards, 28.5. 28.5. His overall line's at 60. And a lot of those times are boosted in those kind of like comeback moments where he just gets like 2 or 3 receptions on a drive. It says 62.5 on a lot of places too. But I will take the under on his targets, which you can find on Underdog at 8.5.
Makes sense. Okay, last one I have here. This is an interesting one to talk through. What will happen first? This is a market on FanDuel. The Chiefs to score points or the Chiefs to punt?
This was a fun one to do research with.
Yeah, and when I looked at it, I was like, oh, this probably is about 50-50 is what I would guess just off gut feel. The odds that they gave for the Chiefs to punt first before scoring is plus 116. So that's the bet I'm going to give out here. When you look at the opponents for Philly this year, they have held 13 of 19 teams that they have played to not score on their first drive. So for me, just at an odds that I would say is probably closer to 50-50, I just think we could see a punt first. That these teams might play tight. It's a Super Bowl. They could be conservative early on, stuff like that. So give me KC to punt before they score, plus 116 on FanDuel.
Yeah, you and I went through the play data and we were like, this is closer to 60%, and it's not really being recognized that way. So, obviously they could score, but the market feels a little inefficient. And to give a kicker one, depending on your site, you can get Harrison Butker over 1.5 field goals. I'm fine with 2.5 field goals or 7.5 kicking points.
I talked about earlier. Ladder, Kyle?
Oh, I would field goal ladder for sure.
Are you going to ladder this field goal?
Dude, Vic
6
Fangio,
field goals?
Vic Fangio can't handle that, man. He has no clue how to stop that.
Kyle's the only person in America cheering when Harrison Butker comes on the field. Everybody else is, yeah, we want points, we want touchdowns. Kyle's like, yes, kick the field goal, take the points. after this, let's build a field goal ladder and give it out as an official, and just say it's me. Goodness, I don't even know if you can do that. I've never even tried.
There are systems like this is actually not possible. We figured that no one would be stupid enough to build a field goal ladder. I did want to give out some long shot ones too. Here's a fun one. Travis Kelce, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert each scored 5 receiving yards in each quarter, plus 5,500. So there's 55 in there if you want to go really deep. And then player to record the first INT of the game. I was surprised that Jalen Watson and Trent McDuffie of the Chiefs were so far back at plus 2,000. So if you think there's interception, I do think it's going to be on the outside because that's where Hurts throws. And those would be the guys that I would throw out there. They're just way behind a lot of the Eagles guys in terms of interception. But if you're really here, you're just here to jump on our parlay and just root with us. So hit us, Betz.
All right, this is on DK. Shop around, get the best odds, always, always, always. Okay, 5 legs. Here we go. Jalen Hurts, anytime touchdown score. Isaiah Pacheco, under 28.5 combined rushing and receiving yards. Harrison Butker, Kyle's taking us to the bank here, 2+ field goals.
Let's go.
This correlates with the Chiefs' team total of under 28.5, meaning if there's kicking field goals instead of scoring touchdowns, the under on their team total is more likely to happen. 28 is a key number, so let's go under 28.5. And then we've already given this out. Jalen Hurts, 200+ passing yards. That brings us to a beautiful 5-leg plus 1,200 SGP on DK.
Yeah, I feel like what this is paying for people's bankroll for best ball. It's like a great goodbye gift for the next month and a half where you're not going to hear our voice on this podcast, but you will on the Dynasty podcast. You're going to hear from us. But plus 1,200, we will give that out. We'll add that in our props too, and just make sure that you guys see the screenshot and everything else. But it has been a fun year. I will say, I hope the Eagles win. I hope that we kind of get to cap this off as a year to remember. Betz is, how have you gone from the beginning of the show? You said you were cool, calm, collected. How do you feel now?
I mean, ever since you shared that next gen stat about Hurts under pressure, I'm terrified. Absolutely terrified.
All right, that's going to do it, Betz. Tell everyone goodbye.
Yes, everybody enjoy the Super Bowl. It should be a great game. And thank you so much to all of you for tuning in all year long. Kyle and I love what we do. We've had a great time. We can't wait to be back with you again for the next season. And we'll see you in a couple months here. Go Birds. Please, Jalen, don't throw an interception.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast. Don't forget to visit us on the web at thefantasyfootballers.com.